So my main aim here was basically that since these guidelines from the British Journal of Hematology, they are pretty much outdated because they were formulated in 2006. But many of the criteria are still used in textbooks, especially the ones for diagnosis and treatment part. It's just a cytogenetics part that has been incorporated, of course, into the new classification, since this is of course, a relatively old classification of, I think this is based on 2006, 2004 classification. And so many of the new immunophenetic markers, cytogenetics, have also changed since then. So we would probably try to go through this along with this recent London hematology oncology guidelines based on acute myeloid leukemia, and these guidelines they actually have incorporated this the BSH. Basically, they have been these guidelines. They have been formulated with specialists in a BSH level 2 hemato-oncology unit. And many of these guidelines have been derived from the ELN consensus guidelines on the diagnosis and management of AML and the original BCSH AML guidelines, and incorporating further details on clinical trials. So these are a relatively more updated version of the UK perspective. So we would plan to actually go through these as well, since I think it would be beneficial since they go into a lot of detail also about the various modalities for treatment and the referral pathways. So just starting from us, because these guidelines, the one with the BSH guidelines, they have just outlined basically as if you go through in the diagnostic workup, these are pretty much very short, so we can go look at them side by side, and I've just let them as the split screen is particularly for that purpose. So as far as the classification of AML is concerned, the WHO system, of course, we'll go over the new WHO classification also, which I'll put up later. But now regarding the basic what they have actually tried to do is that if we just go by the summary, they just labeled their key recommendations are in the form of diagnosis, and that diagnosis mostly involves the bone marrow immunophenotyping and the cytochemistry and the cytogenetics. So this is with all with regard to the diagnostic part. In the methodology, you need to classify the classification. We'll go over it in a few moments with the WHO classification, and then also the main important thing that of course these is also referred to in the Pan London guidelines also is the level of care, the BCSH guidance on the provision of facilities for the care of adult patients with hematological malignancies. So basically, if you go into this, the level 1 is the level of care in which the hospitals provide conventional chemotherapy in the form of outpatient treatment. So this is conventional chemotherapy, which is generally administered in outpatient form. So and this could be because of this could be administered to patients with CML who are probably advised with Gleevec or CL. So chronic leukemias are generally dealt with in level 1 sort of a facility. Whereas this level 2 facility is the one where acute leukemias will be treated, and these are those which have standard intensive chemotherapy regimens. And the patients with acute leukemia are treated here, and they have especially facilities for remission induction also in patients. And they will treat the leukemias and the aggressive lymphomas. Level 3 facilities are for autologous transplantation, but not requiring total body irradiation. And level 4 facilities are those that have expertise in both allogenic and autologous transplantation. Then also, if we go into this these guideline, this the NICE guidance for the multidisciplinary committee. this at the onset of when the patient is being when there is a planned when this management is being planned, the core team members should include a consultant hematologist, a CNS specialist in hematology, the consultant hematopathologist also. So not only a clinical hematologist, but a hematopathologist also with specialty in, of course, leukemias, and then an oncology consultant with the pharmacist, a consultant microbiologist also, and a palliative care specialist with a ward nurse. And this is this one is the actual the oncology team. This would consist of not only the hematopathologist and the hematologist, but also the oncologist who may have this as and the oncology pharmacist, along with the microbiologist and these paramedical nursing and staff. Then and also a coordinator. The extended team members would be those clinical oncologists and the consultant radiologists and psychologists and social workers and data managers of the team also. So basically, you need to have the a consultant hematopathologist who is concerned in the in the induction remission of and the patient, and also hematologist who will go over the different review slides, and then also or the clinical hematologist who will go over the management patient, and the hematologist who will go over the review slides of the bone marrow, and also one specialist in CNS hematology, then also the microbiologist and the oncology pharmacist, etc. So this is the ideal multidisciplinary team, hemato-oncology multidisciplinary team, and then also the level of care, that is the level 2 is the one that is referred to in these guidelines also, in the Pan London guidelines. So this is and also then patient support should be given with access to different online also now available patient groups and other um, groups. And then regarding the prognostic status, I think these are also dealt with and they incorporate much of the BCSH guidelines also. So in a way, we will basically be going through we'll try and of course go through much of these guidelines, um, the Pan London guidelines. So these they have mentioned that acute leukemia is an uncommon and heterogeneous clonal hematopoietic neoplasm, and it represents around 40% of all leukemias in adults, and the incidence rises sharply in adults over the age of at 50 years. So starting with age, their age is mostly in adults, and it represents 40% of those leukemias, and the cure rate in approximately is in those who are fit enough to withstand intensive chemotherapy is approximately 30 to 45%. And for those who are cured, there is a modest increase risk of secondary cancers and cardiovascular disease due to the adverse effects of treatment. So the heterogeneity of AML extends not only to the disease phenotype but also to the many molecular aberrations. So first we have the age of the patient, then then their overall cure rate is generally about 30 to 45% for those who are able to go for intensive chemotherapy. Then we'll go into all the molecular details also. And then the multidisciplinary committee, we of course know that all new cases should be discussed at the multidisciplinary team meeting to agree at the treatment pathway. And then the treatment is quite regimented and driven by well-defined protocols. So there are different protocols, and we'll go, of course, over them. And AML may be curable disease in younger and fitter and young and old fit patients, especially those who can withstand those intensive chemotherapy. But it becomes harder to treat patients with increasing age, um, and fewer patients are cured as age advances. And all patients should be treated with therapy adjusted to performance status and AML risk stratification. So since the disease is rare and treatment is complicated, there are many areas of controversy. So basically, they have to be treated within a clinical trial whenever possible. This is important because and also then so first we had the reference to that multi-disciplinary team that needs to be involved. So and then also the this BCSH level 2 unit that will have expertise in dealing with remission induction and intensive chemo for acute leukemia and aggressive lymphoma patients. Then the referral pathway is that these patients, they should be dealt with those who are suspected. They should be referred to hematologist for assessment on the same day. So basically, they should be referred on the same day on a 2-week wait path. So they are referred on the same day, and uh, and then they should be booked within about 2 weeks. So patients with severe neutropenia, thrombocytopenia, or blasts in the peripheral blood are picked up on a routine, and most of them would be picked up on routine blood tests via laboratory, and suspected AML who should be urgently referred to. And so patients would be, of course, they would be picked up in presenting with varied complaints, and a routine blood test would sometimes pick up these patients with the pancytopenia and peripheral blast. And then they may present directly to the accident emergency sometimes, as in most cases of APML, when they present with their DIC, or they may present just for routine checkups because of some complications of severe neutropenia, thrombocytopenia, and pancytopenias. So whenever they are when they are diagnosed with the peripheral blast in peripheral blood, then they should be urgently referred to an accident and emergency department, or directly to a hematologist inpatient, which treats with the AML. Now this would be a BSH level 2, 3. So 2 would be the one where the intensive chemo would be given, and 3 would be the one which have advanced facilities for allogenic stem cell transplant, but without total body irradiation. So all new patients should be referred to the MDT for confirmation of diagnosis, prognosis, and management plan, taking into account their performance status and need and comorbidity. So the following patients must be brought to the MDT. All those new patients with EML, in order to confirm the diagnosis and the treatment plan. Then all patients where a new line, so first you have new patients, then a new line of therapy which needs to be considered, and also all patients with a restaging assessment of response to treatment. And those in whom allogenic stem cell transplantation is a consideration. So either for new patients, and or all for those patients who are to be considered for a new line of therapy, then also for the reassessment of patients, and because of their poor response, based on assessment of the response to status, and then also for allogenic stem cell transplant consideration. So perhaps we should amend this slightly, but of course this will vary from institute to institute, and but they should be discussed within the 2 weeks of diagnosis. So basically, from the time of diagnosis, they should be referred immediately to a hematologist, preferably an hematology inpatient unit, or either to an accident emergency. And from that, from there on, they should be discussed in MDT as well. And all this should occur within the 2 weeks period of diagnosis. And then the MDT outcome should be documented and communicated to the primary care and secondary care referring center where relevant. So those who are newly diagnosed should have access to specialist hemato-oncology rehabilitation teams. And this would include the physiotherapist, the occupational therapist, and this language and dietitian as specialist. And where there are not currently specialist hematology oncology teams, they should be able to access the oncology. Um, uh, uh, they should be able to access the oncology specialist, or at a minimum rehabilitation teams with access to support and advice from hemato-oncology specialists. So planning for an allogenic stem cell transplant should begin at the time of diagnosis in conjunction with the transplant center. And basically those who are planned, at first at the MDT, they should be discussed promptly and within a 2-week period. And then they should also given and then when the treatment is planned and they are admitted for inpatient chemotherapy, they should also have access to specialist rehabilitation teams, and not only the hematology team, but also the rehabilitation team, which includes, of course, these physiotherapists, occupational speech and language therapists, and the dietitians. And then they should also, a transplant team should also then look into them. So there will be like 2-3 teams looking into them. First, the primary hematology oncology consultation team, then the rehab team, and then the transplant team. So the transplant team, if the patient is fit for transplant, and if he is being considered for transplant, then his HLA typing should also be done at the time of diagnosis. So all this is like happening in this newly diagnosed patient who is being referred, who's being who is to be admitted in patient for this. So there is a joint approach with the elderly care physicians also, and palliative care teams maybe. So if in an elderly patient who's so either you were going for allogeneic transplant, and you will also then have this the third party will be the transplant specialist team. But if you do not have this transplant specialist team, and for elderly patients who are ineligible for transplant, then you need to incorporate this palliative care team. So anyways, you have these three teams: those hematology and oncology consultants, those rehab team, then either the transplant team or the palliative care team would need to be uh, would need to be put on held on board. And so then the patient should be assessed for their prognosis, the performance status, and their eligibility for the treatment options. So patients who fail to respond to the first line therapy, or lose response, or experience disease progression, they may be discussed with the center offering a clinical trial. So basically, patients who at some time they fail to respond, or they lose response, they may be then even offered clinical trials. So you even have these epidemiologists and also all those also involved, and the data consultant teams, and so clinical research scientists may also be um, then on board. So patients considered for hematopoietic stem cell transplantation need to be referred early in their treatment, as soon as practical, and at least after recovery from cycle 1 induction to a JACIE accredited center. So now coming to the diagnosis part of this, the investigations would of course include these um, it would start, of course, from a history. The investigation would start from this history part, where the patient would give a history of fever and from infections, bleeding, and there will be symptoms of anemia and hyperviscosity in CNS. So there could be symptoms due to the pancytopenia, due to the disease in pancytopenia, due to the bone involvement, due to the cytopenias in themselves, and then also the constitutional symptoms, and there could be symptoms of organ involvement with the CNS involvement, and or hepatosplenomegaly. So on examination also there could be all these these could be documented on examination, even with the bruises, bleeding, petechia, purpura, and signs of infection or pallor, jaundice, and then also hepatosplenomegaly. And for most patients, and skin examination is also forms a very important part of patients with leukemia who have leukemia cutis or other skin abnormalities, and soft tissue sarcomas may also be observed. So for most patients, the diagnosis is based on the basis, and then the lab investigations. These would include, of course, the CBC, the peripheral film. In elderly patients, the full blood count should be performed for those presenting with symptoms of anemia, infection, or bruising, and a specialist center and a blood film, the bone marrow aspiration fine with the immunophenotyping and cytogenetics can be undertaken to assess for a clonal abnormality. So on peripheral blood, if the blasts are found, then they should go directly for a bone marrow aspirated and refined with immunophenotyping and cytogenetics. So where a bone marrow aspirate and refined is declined by the patient or is inappropriate based on the performance status of the patient, peripheral blood immunophenotyping and cytogenetics with FISH may be informative also. So when the diagnosis of AML is suspected, so you have both basically on peripheral blood, all the investigations, and then bone marrow. These are the sort of the crux of the main investigations. When you find blasts on peripheral smear, you go for a bone marrow assessment, and then you can also go for immunophenotyping and cytogenetics. Either you can go for immunophenotyping and cytogenetics on the bone marrow aspirate, but if the bone marrow is declined or is inappropriate based on performance status, then even the peripheral blood immunophenotyping and cytogenetics along with FISH may be informative as well. So when the diagnosis of AML is suspected, a full history and examination should be undertaken, and all comorbidities should be assessed to aid the treatment selection and a management plan. So CBC peripheral film along with the bone marrow form the main basis of diagnosis, but other baseline investigations to aid in the treatment selection and the management plan. These would actually help in the treatment selection, the management plan, and serve as a baseline of would be also along with the CBC and peripheral fluid differential, also the retics and data of and then the baseline hematinic profile with vitamin B12 and folate and ferritin, and also then the coagulation screen, blood group and antibody screen, then the renal, then also the basic metabolic profile with the liver, renal and bone profiles, and the blood glucose level, LDH, and C-reactive proteins. So we have all these uh, related to the hematology. We have the CBC, retic, DAT, and hematinics and coagulation screen. Then the blood bank with the blood grouping and antibody screen. Then the chemical estimations of renal, liver, bone marrow profile, bone profiles, and with the glucose, LDH, and uric acid C-reactive protein. And so special investigations including serum immunoglobulins and serum protein electrophoresis. With then for the special reference to those candidates for transplant, also HLA typing and viral serology, and also the G6PD screen for the to assess their appropriateness for various treatment modalities, and then also their baseline radiological examinations that would include the ECG, chest X-ray, echo, and MAGA. And then special investigations would be the creatinine clearance and pregnancy test and MRSA screening swabs in the microbiology section. Also, then the MRSA screening swabs and urine analysis and infection screen. So basically, pan cultures would also need to be sent, and MRSA screening would be done in the uh, nasal swabs may also be examined, and especially MRSA screening swabs are done. So for patients with the features suggestive of CNS disease, sometimes even MRI or CT of head, spine, or lumbar puncture may be even done, maybe sent to the microbiology or assessment also. So you have like all those labs involved. That is the radiology department, the microbiology department, the chemical pathology department with the renal, LFTs, RFTs, glucose, and the uric acid with C-reactive protein, and the special chemistry with the serum protein electrophoresis and G6PD and G6PD screen, creatinine clearance, and then also the virology department with the viral analysis for hepatitis A, B, C, and HIV with CMV, total antibody IgG and IgM would be done. For hepatitis B, the whole profile of HBV as surface antigen, then HBV surface so not only the surface antigen but also the surface antibody, and then the core antibody also. So we have both the surface and the core antibodies and the HBs antigen along with so we have HBs antigen along with the HBs antibody and the core antibody. So this is like all the baseline long list of investigations. We can divide them according to the departments, that is those which are sent to the hematology and blood bank, those that are sent to the chemical chemistry department, then the special chemistry department, and then the radiology and the microbiology along with the tests for special tests like when you have HLA typing in G6PD screen and creatinine clearance also. Then for fertility, then considerations are no. So considerations for fertility preservation should be made for those of reproductive age, and the treatment options for fertility preservation should be discussed. and they should be referred to a fertility specialist or a sperm cryopreservation specialist with egg harvesting and or fertilized embryos if possible. And prior to induction of chemo, the latter may not be available to patients, but may be an option if a stem cell transplant is being contemplated later in the course of treatment. Then careful attention must be paid to the labeling of forms and samples before sending to the SIH MDS and the trial center. So basically all the labeling and the processing of files should be done beforehand, and the bone marrow aspirate and defined regarding this. The sample collection for morphology, phenotyping, cytogenetics, and molecular genetics, and the bone marrow refined would be sent. So we have both the histology department, histopathology department also, who have to who are taken on board with the because of the aspirate and defined uh, assessments. Then for imaging also, they need to go for MRI, especially of the brain and the whole spine. And in the presence of a high blast count or low platelet count, if a bleed is suspected, an urgent non-contrasted CT may be done prior to further investigations also. And they, of course, I need to have a baseline chest X-ray, also the MAGA and the ECG and echoes may be done prior to intensive chemotherapy. Then core diagnostic criteria include, of course, this diagnosis would be of more than or equal to 20% bone marrow of myeloid blasts in the bone marrow. This is according to the WHO criteria 2016. But of course, these recurrent cytogenetics involving the translocation 821 in version 16 and the translocation 1517, and they are considered as AML regardless of the blast percentage. So either you have more than 20% or you can have these recurrent cytogenetics. So these recurrent cytogenetics, they override this requirement for myeloid blast. But the history of a therapy related AML MDS with balanced translocations would override this AML with recurrent genetic abnormalities. So so those AMLs, the cases who have therapy related who have documented therapy related AML MDS, and they should be categorized as therapy related AML with the associated genetic abnormality noted rather than labeled as AML with recurrent genetic abnormalities. So if they have a history of being of therapy is being of therapy related AML MDS, then even if they have these cytogenetic abnormalities, they should be categorized as therapy related rather than AML with recurrent abnormalities. So AML can be present in the peripheral blood, bone marrow, or soft tissues, especially like for myeloid sarcomas. And regardless of their presentation, all the samples should be assessed for involvement. So then we would go for bone marrow morphology, flow cytometry, cytogenetics, and molecular analysis. So for presentation in the bone marrow, the morphology of the bone marrow aspirate and peripheral blood, flow cytometry and immunohistochemistry panel on Prefine, and cytogenetics and molecular with whole genome sequencing for eligible patients may be done. And for myeloid sarcomas, you would go again for the bone marrow aspirate and Prefine, and immunocytochemistry panel on the tissue, same as for Prefine. And cytogenetics and FISH on tissue aspirate would be optional. So all patients with AML who will undergo treatment should have a bone marrow test performed at presentation, and during so whether they have this sarcomas, even they need to go for bone marrow test, and as a baseline also at the time of diagnosis and during the therapy also for monitoring and response categorization, especially for the assessment of minimal residual disease. So diagnosis may be used, may be made using peripheral blood or alone if the diagnosis is definite, based on typical features and tests, and if the patient's performance status precludes the remission induction treatment or effective disease modification. So the blood film is to be examined in conjunction with the bone marrow for blasts, and also atypical features, for example, evidence of hemolysis. So the bone marrow aspirate, it is recommended that at least 400 cells are evaluated in this bone marrow aspirate. For MDS, we had this 200 cell count, in which the 200 cells were to be examined to quantify the blast count and the dysplasia. And they would have and so for this, it is recommended that at least 400 cells are evaluated and a particulate smear or film examined using a May Grunwald Giemsa stain or a right Giemsa stain in order to assess the leukemic blast percentage. So the presence of leukemic blasts more than 20% is diagnostic of AML. If acute promyelocytic leukemia is suspected, then this should be reported urgently, as treatment should be started while the reports of FISH are awaited. So yeah, all transretinochise treatment should be started while these reports are for APML, if suspected, is awaited. So these tests the cytochemistry is rarely now performed, since immunophenotyping and flow cytometry is readily available. So absent MPO by cytochemistry does not rule out a myeloid lineage, as early myeloblasts and monoblasts may lack MPO. So um, now regarding flow cytometry, we'll go into all these panels also that are used, the Euroflow panels with the ALOT, and that includes the AML markers in how they go about categorizing these tubes. So we go into the details of the flow cytometry, cytogenetics, and molecular assessment, along with bone marrow refine assessment. I think we'll just take a short break of about 1 minute, 1 to 2 minutes, and then I will rejoin with this diagnostic workup and the classification of AML along with risk stratification.